This is the PowerPoint for glazing clay objects, Blaine style. So this is the Blaine High School Art Department's glazing PowerPoint. Step one is to sand your work, but only sand if you have sharp areas or places that need something to sand off. If you sand, you must wash your project underneath the water and wait 24 hours to glaze. It's because those open kind of pores take in the water instead of your glaze. Step two, paint on wax over areas you don't want to glaze, and you need to make sure that you wax carefully and don't spill it anywhere because we can't remove it. It has to go back through the kiln to come off. The next stage is to wax your bottom, and waxing your bottom means that you have to go to the wax plate in the front of the room, turn the wax plate in between simmer and 250. Don't go any higher than that, otherwise we have smoking and that's bad. Please make sure that your bottom is waxed and do not tip your project until it's dry. This is a picture of the glaze room at BHS and the glaze matrix. We're going to talk a little bit about how this works, but you have to go back here in the room to glaze. The glaze matrix works pretty easily. It's got an XY coordinate, so you see the first dip is on the left side and the second dip is on the top. First thing you need to do is pick a glaze color. That's probably the hardest thing to do. This is the low fire glazes. They are cone 5-6 and they go in the electric kiln. There's a shorter turnaround time for those glazes. If you need to go high fire or cone 10, this goes in the gas kiln. This is the colors for that. It is a longer turnaround time. Again, the matrix works the same way. First dip on the left, second on the top and bottom. To make the color inside of the circle, you would have to dip one dip of Woo Blue and then dip one dip of Cal Red over the top. Please do not dip more than one time per color. If you do, you'll have too thick of glaze and will have to hit your project with a hammer. Step 4, decide if you want to use highlight colors, or you can paint on any projects that are smaller, and you need to paint on 3 coats. All paint on glazes are low fire cone 5-6. If you're not going to paint on glazes, then you're going to be dipping a glaze. And dipping a glaze means that you have to go into the glaze room and read the bucket. Then you need to mix your glaze really well. Mix at least for 1 minute, making sure to scrape the bottom and the sides of the bucket so all of the pieces get mixed in. Then after you're done mixing your glaze, make sure that your paddle or your whisk gets put into the water bucket to get washed off, or you can go to the sink and wash it off, and that will make sure that we don't contaminate other glazes. Please do not contaminate other glazes by putting that back into a different glaze without washing in between. This is what a bucket of fully mixed glaze looks like. It should be pretty uniform in color when you get done mixing. Notice we only have one bucket open at a time, otherwise we have some evaporation. We do have tongs for you to use. Be careful with these. Sometimes if you don't set up your tong correctly, what will happen is that you'll drop your stuff into the bucket, and that's bad. If you do drop your project into the bucket, please take it out and fully wash it off under the water in the sink. Okay, step 6, dip your object only 2 times. Make sure that you dip it in, wait for 3 seconds or so, and then pull it back out. If your project is in longer than 3 seconds, it will need to be washed off. So there it is, count to 3, remove from the bucket. Let the first dip air dry before dip number 2. Place on a wooden bat or a wooden board in between dips. So the next step is going to be to double check that you have finger sanded any impurities or marks from your tongs or your hands. That means wait till it's dry and take your finger and sand over the top of it to get rid of the mark. Fingers and tongs can leave impurities, so you want to get these off, otherwise you will have a spot that doesn't get glazed. Please cover your glaze bucket when you're finished. If you leave the cover off, these evaporate, and then Mr. Misek and I need to remix these. They have a particular reading that they need to be at in order to work. Carry your project back to your room on a plastic bat or wooden board. When you get it back to the room, you need to make sure that you clean off the bottom completely. Step 8 is to take a sponge and get it wet and clean off the bottom. So wash your bottom with a sponge. Glaze cannot be on the bottom of a project, which is why we wax. If it does have glaze on the bottom of it, it actually sticks to our kiln shelf and we hit it with a hammer. We will not glaze anything that has a dirty bottom. We don't like dirty bottoms. Okay, this is what it looks like when it's finished. All clay projects do not have anything on the bottom where they sat in the kiln. Finally, I will fire your project to whatever temp you specified, so you need to tell us if it's low fire or high fire. Firing takes 2 days minimum from the time the kiln door is shut. Sometimes it takes longer if it's high fired. Please be patient. You will receive your work ASAP. And then please claim your work after it's fired. It really wants to be with you. It doesn't want to be orphaned with us. Okay, so take your projects home.